Welcome back to A Sharper Life, the podcast that empowers you on your personal journey to a sharper, healthier, and more fulfilling life. I am your host, Nikki Sharp, a two-time best-selling author, wellness expert, and transformation coach. Each week, we dive into thought-provoking conversations with experts such as the world's leading neuroscientist, Dr. Tara Swart, brain experts Jim Quick and Dr. Daniel Amen, to conversations like increasing your confidence, especially when it comes to Zoom meetings, and that is with former TV anchor Lynn Smith. And yes, those are all past guests and conversations, so scroll on through the archives to have a listen. And if you haven't done so yet, hit that subscribe button, as A Sharper Life is filled with practical tips, actionable tools, as well as vulnerable stories to help you see the results that you want and deserve in life. Now, this week, I wanted to talk about something that affects all of us, 100% of human beings. And that is why it is that you have such a hard time making changes in your life, even if what you're currently doing is bringing you unhappiness. Now, here's the thing. It is easier to stay in a situation, whether it's a toxic relationship, a job that you hate, or even repeating self-sabotaging behaviors. It's easier to do that than it is to make a change. And we're going to be talking about why. This is what I call the unfamiliar heaven versus the familiar hell. So you're going to hear me talking about that quite a bit. We're going to be going over what these two are, examples in each, and why it is so damn hard to make a change to go from your own familiar hell into finding that unfamiliar but peaceful heaven. So this is a concept that I have been talking about and really resonating with for quite a while now. And if you've been following along my journey, you know that I got divorced, I moved, I came to London. So I essentially made the big change to go from a familiar hell into an unfamiliar heaven. And it has not been easy all the time. It has been quite hard, honestly. Many of the things that I've dealt with, from just going through a separation in the beginning, that was not easy. And choosing to go from a separation to divorce, that was not easy. Going from that and choosing to move, right? So there's three things that people talk about being the hardest things in life that you can go through, which is death, divorce, and a move. So I did two of those things. And then you have all of the things of the move and integrating into a new culture. And yes, I have lived in London before, so it's not entirely new. But at the same time, I am navigating so much from going what was a familiar hell into what is now an unfamiliar heaven. And the key thing that I want you to take away here is that it is possible to get to your unfamiliar heaven, but you have to be willing to make some changes and deal with some new patterns, new behaviors that are not going to feel good in the moment. And that's where I'm going to infuse some personal stories here, as well as share a bit about various clients that I've worked with, and everything obviously is anonymous. But I want you just to get across and understand that change is possible, but there is a reason why you are having such a hard time making the changes that you want in order to see results that you deserve. So, what is the familiar hell? The familiar hell is typically where you are right now. It is where you're sitting and you're not really liking where you're at. Whatever it might be, that you're in a relationship, right, that doesn't feel good, or you go to a job that really just depresses you or makes you unhappy. There's even moments where you may have made a big change to do something, and so you're going towards that unfamiliar heaven, but the mind is questioning and saying, God, did I do the right thing? And it's trying to take you back to that familiar hell. So what exactly is the familiar hell? It has to do with both your nervous system and your brain. So when it comes to the nervous system is your parasympathetic and your sympathetic nervous system, and your nervous system is in your entire body. So your nervous system will always choose what is familiar over what is not familiar, even if what is not familiar is better for you. So humans tend to prefer the known, right? Even if it's negative or it's unpleasant, we choose the known over the unknown, even if it has potential for the unknown to be positive or enjoyable. So while the familiar might feel safe, it can keep you stuck in situations that don't fulfill you, and it doesn't allow you to grow. And I'm going to explain this in a lot more detail, but these are a little bit more of the bullet points that I want you just to think about. And so I'm going to be asking some questions to you throughout the episode as well. So while the familiar, where you're at right now, feels safe, that is a key thing. The familiar hell is a place of safety. It's certainty. You've done it. You've been there. You know what to expect. So even though it might feel safe, it can keep you stuck in situations, as I said, that don't fulfill you, doesn't allow you to grow. And here's the most important part of it. It is typically not healthy. So the familiar hell is typically not healthy. And why is that? Because humans, we are creatures of habit. We like to find comfort in the familiar. So this shows up in your reluctance to change, and even when that change might lead to a better situation. So let's break it down a little bit more of what this action means. As I said, your nervous system is like an old friend. It has been with you since the day that you were born. Your nervous system is designed to keep you safe, and it does so by seeking out patterns and predictability in your environment. Now, these patterns become deeply ingrained in your nervous system, and because you experience them repeatedly over time, your brain perceives it as safe simply because it is known. So, what does this mean? An example is, and I have so many clients that come in and I work with them of they don't like their body. They have weight, they can't lose it. They tell me, I've tried everything. And it was interesting. I actually did some polls on Instagram the other week where I said, when it comes to results, and I think the three options I gave was, I don't know what to do to see the results that I want. Number two was, I know what to do, but I just don't do it. And number three was, I feel like I've tried everything. The vast majority of people, I think like 75% of people answered, I know what to do, but I'm just not doing it. So my question for you, number one is, what is the area that you want change in your life? Is it that you're looking for love? Or is it that you're in an unhealthy relationship? Is it that you don't like your body? You don't like your job? You want more money? So getting clear on what's the area that you want. Number two, where are you holding yourself back? And I want you to be really, really honest with yourself here. Where are you holding yourself back? And I want to go back to the example of women that come to me and they don't like their body. They're not feeling good. Now, I always, before we even talk about food, I always ask and I say, what's your stress level? What's your joy level? Every single time the stress level is higher than the joy level. And I can already tell you that if your stress levels are higher, you're not going to see the results you want. But let's go a step further. If you are constantly in a state of stress and you've kind of just learned to deal with it, that is because that has become a familiar pattern. Your brain and your body, your nervous system have learned that stress is actually comforting. And this is going to sound really, really counterintuitive as I explain it, because the brain is going to sit there and say, yeah, but I don't like stress. I don't want it. But the thing is, when you think a negative thought, right? When you think a negative thought or an unhealthy pattern that you're doing, let's say it's you binge eat when you're not feeling good about yourself, or you drink alcohol when you're feeling lonely. Those are repeated patterns that you do to find comfort. Now, something that I want to get into really quickly is I've been really open and honest about my relationship with alcohol during my divorce. And alcohol, wine specifically, absolutely became a comforting friend when everything else was going so fucking haywire and chaotic in my life. And it felt like I was just in a washing machine on the tumble. It was just like whoosh, so many things happening that wine became that comforting friend. It became the stability of something that I knew every day if I had it. And by the way, I'm not like I've explained this before. I'm not someone that goes out and gets like totally shit-faced drunk every night, but I definitely do have two or three glasses of wine most nights, or that was until a few months ago where I made a change. And I'm going to explain exactly what I did to go into my unfamiliar heaven. So I knew that drinking wine was a comfort thing. And this is where I'm asking you to be super real and honest with yourself. What are you doing right now? What choice are you making right now that is the comforting choice, even if you don't necessarily like it? So, as I said, it might be binge eating or emotional eating when you're stressed out or angry. It might be isolating yourself when you start to feel down or overwhelmed. It could be that you throw yourself into work when shit is going wrong. So the more, let's say, work is not going well, the more you throw yourself into work. Or let's say your personal life in your relationships are not going as you want. And because of that, you start to numb and avoid the discomfort, right? The discomfort of those feelings by throwing yourself into people pleasing or throwing yourself into work, essentially avoiding the discomfort. So going back to my example with wine, I became very, very aware that wine had become a companion. And this is something I want you to think about is your familiar hell right now. It is your companion, even if you don't fucking like that companion. So I was speaking with a friend. His daughter has an eating disorder. And we were chatting about this because I've had two eating disorders. I've overcome them. And I love helping people understand the complexities of the mind with it. But an eating disorder is very, very similar to what I was just explaining about wine. It becomes a companion. It becomes familiar when so many things in your life feel unfamiliar or uncertain. So the brain itself, the brain is creative of beliefs that are in the back of your mind, your subconscious. Your subconscious is 90% of your brain. And I've talked about this before, but your subconscious is literally creating the results that you want, the results that you don't have. The subconscious mind, the 90%, then essentially affects your conscious mind, which is only 10% of the brain. And science has proven this. It's about 85 to 90%, give or take, for different people. So that is essentially like your entire life is being run on programming that you don't know what it is. Now, your brain is directly connected to your nervous system. Now, your nervous system, there are things in your nervous system that feel familiar. There are things that don't feel familiar. That's when we talk about the familiar hell versus the unfamiliar heaven. Now, I'm going to go, as I said, I'm going to give lots of random examples through this, but your brain, so you have your subconscious, which is affecting your conscious mind. The back of your mind, your subconscious, is where your beliefs are stored. Your beliefs are nothing more than thoughts that you have thought over enough times, and it becomes a neural pathway in the brain. And you now have a belief about men, about women, about finances, about how to spend money, about life, about love. We all have our beliefs. Now, your beliefs then affect the thoughts that you think. Am I good enough? Do I deserve this? The thoughts you think then affect the words you say. And the words you say might be things like, I'm always going to be fat, or I'm big boned, or I've tried everything and I'm still not seeing results. You know, the amount of people that I've spoken to when it comes to love, and they say, I'm not worthy of it, or I don't deserve it. And I actually had a really fascinating conversation this past week speaking to someone who said, I don't love myself. And I said, oh, okay, well, would you like to learn how? And he said, no, why would I want to learn how to love myself? And for me, that was such an interesting thing. Like, why would you not want to? But that is a familiar hell, is I have my beliefs, I have the thoughts that I think, and I'm just going to go about life as is. So we have our beliefs, our thoughts, our words. Our words then are a direct correlation to the actions that you do or you don't do, right? And your actions become your results. Your results essentially become your destiny. And so the familiar hell is a companion. It feels safe. And the brain is always looking for perceived danger in the world. And once it finds comfort, even if that comfort is not enjoyable or you don't like it, once the brain has comfort, it doesn't want to step out of that comfort, because going out of the comfort means unfamiliarity. It means uncertainty. And the brain is literally hardwired to want certainty. We all want certainty. We all want to know when we're going to make more money, when we're going to fall in love, when we're going to have kids, how our kids are going to grow up. Like, we all want certainty. Now, here's the thing. There is nothing certain in life, nothing. So what happens is the brain and the nervous system, they go hand in hand, and they find some sort of comfort, of safety, of familiarity. And that is where we get stuck and trapped in unhealthy relationships, in disordered eating, in numbing and avoiding your emotions when they come up, discomfort. And so the challenge with this, right, is to know that this is all going on such a subconscious level. That is why it makes it so hard to leave unhealthy relationships. Now, an unhealthy relationship is not just with another person, my friends. That unhealthy relationship might be with yourself. So I want you to think about, when you go look in the mirror or you put on clothes getting ready for your day, what are you saying to yourself? Are you saying really kind, loving, beautiful words to yourself? Or are you saying, you look like shit, you're fat, you're ugly, you're never going to get the man or the woman, you're never going to make enough money, right? Are you tearing yourself down, or are you boosting yourself up every single day? And how often are you talking to yourself? Now, the reason that I bring that up is because when we sit there and talk bad about ourselves, that is actually your nervous system that has been programmed into your nervous system and your brain to become certainty. So even though it feels like shit that you're sitting there and talking down to yourself, you have created a pattern in neuroplasticity. You have created patterns in the brain on this now becoming your companion. So your companion is the familiar hell that feels like shit and you don't like it, but you don't know how to get rid of it. Now, I want you to think about, have you ever had a relationship in your life and you don't really like this person anymore? It could be a past lover, boyfriend, girlfriend. It could be an ex-husband, ex-wife. It could be the parent of the, co-parent of your children. It could be a friend that you don't see eye to eye anymore. It can be anyone. It can be a boss, but you have a relationship with someone and you're like, I don't really like this person, but I feel like they're manipulating me. I know I'm allowing myself to be manipulated, but I can't seem to do anything to either end this relationship or just to set them free and set myself free. That, my friends, is you being stuck in the familiar hell. Why? Because it is too goddamn scary for the brain to cut someone off or say, we're not friends anymore, than it is to typically go into that unfamiliar heaven, and the heaven being the thing that actually is going to bring you joy and love and happiness and connection and fulfillment in your life and your body. So why do we cling onto the familiar, even if we don't like it? Even if we don't like it. Well, number one, as I said, fear of the unknown. We fear what we don't know. Point blank. No human wants to go into a dark cave by themselves without a flashlight. Like, you have no idea what would happen. And this is where the brain has been programmed over hundreds of thousands of years, that we create patterns in our life because it creates routine. Routines are safe. So if you think about your morning routine, I want you to write this down for me. What do you do in your morning routine? If I said, tell me what you do, exactly what you do every single morning, my guess is the very vast majority, probably 99% of you, are going to say, I sleep on the same side of the bed. The first thing I do is X, Y, or Z, right? Whatever it might be. I reach for my coffee, or I go take a shower, or I go take a poop, whatever it might be. Or I reach for my phone. Okay. What do you do after that? Okay, I make breakfast, I get the kids ready, and I go to work. Your routine, I can guarantee, has so few changes in it because, we've talked about, the brain likes routine. It likes routine and creates routine, and the routine is safe. And so even though, let's say you're waking up and you're checking your emails, you're checking social media, and you're like, I find myself scrolling and comparing myself to other people, wham, bam. But suddenly you're comparing yourself and feeling like shit. And yet, why do you keep doing it every day? I have a client, so we've been working together for quite a while, and she would step on the scale every single morning. Every single morning, she would get pissed off. She would beat herself up. And I asked her, why don't you just not step on the scale then? And she told me, I can't do it. I can't. I literally can't. Why? Because the scale has become the companion. The scale has, even though she fucking hates it and she gets really angry at herself, the scale became the companion. It became the familiar health. So it gave her certainty. Now, she didn't like the certainty that it gave her. The certainty that it gave her was, I'm overweight, I don't feel good. So the more she would step on the scale, the brain would say, well, if you don't step on the scale, you're going to gain even more weight. I'm going to say that again because I think it's going to resonate with at least one of you, that if I don't step on the scale today, the next time I get on it, it's going to tell me I've gained even more weight. So essentially, you've become a slave to the scale. And this is what we do as humans. We become slave to the thing that helps us out in the beginning, right? The coping mechanism, it helps us out in the beginning until it becomes our familiar hell. Now, I have another friend who is going through an interesting time within relationships with an ex-wife, and he has been telling me that the ex is manipulating him. He doesn't know how to just kind of end that. And instead of going forward into kind of choosing his new life and being done, it's essentially like he's still married to the ex-wife, even though they're not married anymore. And that is because it has become a companion of knowing. There's a level of comfort knowing, okay, she's going to be there. She's going to talk bad to me. Same thing as the scale, right? You get on the scale, you feel like shit afterwards. And so at some point, all of us have to make a choice on, I don't want this thing anymore. I don't want this hell anymore. And that's why I led kind of this whole conversation off with me choosing to do a separation, choosing to get a divorce, choosing to move, because all of that was leaving the familiar hell, which was triggering my nervous system over and over and over again. Now, I want to take another step back and go into the nervous system. Whatever is familiar to you right now is based on something that happened in childhood where there is a similar pattern. It doesn't matter how old you are right now and what the actual pattern is, but when you look at, there is a pattern of maybe your nervous system feeling triggered, you're going into fight or flight. That is because that is a pattern you have from childhood. So we repeat patterns in our life until we learn the lesson, and that is where we can then move into our unfamiliar heaven. So the patterns created, this is what I want you to start becoming aware of. What do I think my patterns are? Or what patterns do I see from childhood What sort of things did I feel in childhood? And by the way, this is not putting any blame on parents, because parents were essentially growing up as they had you, they had me. And I think that we vilify, oh, my parents didn't do the right thing and all of that. And it's like, they didn't necessarily know what to do because you were a kid who didn't know how to talk yet in most cases. But there is a level of, whether it was at school, maybe you got bullied. Let's say you got bullied at school and you go and bully yourself. There's a sense of familiarity in your nervous system that triggers it off and puts you into the sympathetic or fight or flight based on that pattern from childhood. And that's why I was talking about the beliefs in the back of the head, in your subconscious, because all of these things, the patterns from childhood that we experience, they have emotional meanings attached to them. So any experience we have has an emotional meaning attached to it, and then it gets lodged in the subconscious brain. And so from there, we then repeat these patterns, and that is your familiar hell. It is something that is being repeated from childhood. So I would just take a little stab, write it down. What sort of patterns do I see? And something that I learned in my separation, and really what led from my separation to my divorce, was that I recognized I was repeating things that and I don't want to say I necessarily was, but I had chosen to enter a relationship that was mimicking very similar things that I went through as a child. And when I realized that, I said, I don't want to repeat that. So I had to become aware of what the patterns were. And from there, learn the lessons, because you cannot leave the familiar hell if you don't learn the lesson associated with it. If you, like from my client, if she just takes away the scale and is like, okay, I'm just not going to do that anymore, what happens is we will replace one pattern for another. This is why a lot of people go from, let's say, anorexia or eating disorders, and then they quote unquote overcome it and they start over exercising. So you haven't actually gotten rid of the pattern, you just changed the thing of it. And that's what's been so interesting for me, is to recognize my relationship with alcohol and be like, oh, so I have no problems, no issues with food whatsoever. But I definitely am realizing that just like the eating disorder was my companion, alcohol became my companion too. Oh, shit, right? God damn it. Why does that happen? Now, the interesting part for me was to then take a step back, and I'm going to give you some tools on if you're trying to get out of the familiar hell into the unfamiliar heaven. There were some tools that I really implemented. And because of this, I have been able to learn some incredible lessons that I didn't know that I needed to have, as well as change my relationship with alcohol. And I didn't do it by beating myself up and saying, Nikki, you're a fucking failure. I did it through compassion. I did it through grace. I did it through being kind to myself. So I can tell you that if you are trying to make a change in your life, or you are not liking something in your life right now, beating yourself up, saying, I'm not worthy, I'm not good enough, I don't deserve this, you will never escape the familiar hell if you continue doing that. So let's continue quickly with why do we cling to the familiar? So as I had said, there's fear of the unknown, and an unfamiliar path might lead to a better place, but it is uncharted territory. For the mind, that is fucking scary. The uncertainty involves, it can be literally paralyzing, and it makes us choose between what's known and what's predictable, and we have no fucking idea. Right? So that's like entering the dark cave and you're like, I don't know what's in here. But hey, you never know. You go through the dark cave and then you find this magical, waterfall on the other end. So it's through our fears, it's through the darkness, it's through going through that unknown. That is where we find the beauty and the magic, but you have to be willing to go through the darkness. And the darkness is scary because it's not familiar and the brain wants familiarity. So number 2 is that we want comfort. We have comfort. We like comfort in routine. So humans find solace in routines. They provide structure to our lives. And guess what? They make you feel in control. And that is the key thing here. Routines make you feel in control. And there are so many clients that I work with that say, I feel out of control in my life. So guess what they try to do? They try to control their bodies. They try to control their partners. They try to control their own emotions. The amount of people that I have spoken with that put up intimacy blocks with love because that makes them not feel in control of it, because love is scary. We have no idea what's going to happen. You can show up and say, I love you to someone and they don't say it back. Ooh, people don't want that. So it's easier to not say I love you. It's easier to push people away because that is control of a situation. Humans don't like uncertainty. So the problem with this is that the inertia keeps us locked in place even when we know that the change might be beneficial. And I want you to think about like the relationships in your life. Think about the most challenging relationship in your life right now. The one where you really know it either needs to end, or one where you are pushing away love right now. Is that what you really want? Do you really want to be stuck in a codependent relationship right now where you feel like you're being manipulated? Or do you want to be stuck in something controlling where you're not feeling totally happy or fulfilled? No, of course. The answer is no. But the thing is that we don't like change because we don't like new routines until it's a routine, right? We don't like new things because that means that we are out of perceived control. So your brain is constantly trying to control things all day long. And this is why it becomes easier to push people away. It becomes easier to push negative thoughts away and quote unquote pretend that they don't exist. This is why we numb and avoid our emotions. And I can tell you, the more that you numb and avoid the very thing that you're hiding from right now, the more challenging it will get, the more unhappiness you will find. And this will continue truly until you hit a point in life where you say, that's enough. I can't do this anymore. Oftentimes, this happens way later in people's lives where they realize that time is finite and they don't have a lot of time left. And that's where they think, wow, I really should have prioritized my family more, or I should have made the scary choice or done the scary thing. And I spoke with Catherine Duncan, who worked with, she would lead people on their deathbeds to death and their souls leaving their body. And I had asked her, what was the most common thing or number one thing that people said on their deathbeds? And she said, yeah, I worked too hard. I didn't pay attention to my family enough. I cared too much what people think. And so that also leads, the familiar hell is where we put on masks and we people please, because God forbid, what would happen if someone doesn't like me, right? So it becomes easier to control, quote unquote, control a situation or people by putting on a mask, because what would happen if they don't like me? Well, then I'm unlovable, then I'm not worthy, right? So all of these beliefs start to kick up. So it's easier to just put on this mask, people please, end of story. Only it's not, because it leaves you feeling resentful, drained, unfulfilled. So here are a few examples in real life in terms of the familiar hell. And I hope, by the way, that you're getting this. I hope that it's resonating in some way, shape, or form. I hope that you're able to kind of, at this moment, think about some area in your life and you're like, oh, that might be my familiar hell. Ask yourself this question: what is my familiar hell? Where am I? What does it look like? So examples in real life: staying in a bad relationship. So many people stay in unhealthy or toxic relationships because they fear being alone, or they think that they won't find someone better. And so the familiar pain of being in an unhealthy relationship feels safer than the unknown joy of having to be single and sit with yourself and be alone and put yourself first. So we stay in relationships even if it is fucking toxic and fucking unhealthy. And here is the really big thing: more than likely you are in an unhealthy relationship with yourself. Because if you are beating yourself up and saying shitty things to yourself, and you are just negatively talking to yourself throughout the day, that is an abusive relationship. Would you let someone else talk to you that way? Would you let a partner say the things that you say to yourself on a daily basis? My hope is that you would not. My hope is that you would choose to leave that relationship. The problem is many people don't leave that relationship, which is also why it becomes so hard for you to leave an unhealthy relationship with yourself, because that means making a change. And making a change, the reason it is so hard to make a change is because you have to admit something's wrong. And to admit something is wrong means that you can't blame other people. You have to take some level of accountability. And this, I would say, is probably the most important piece of this entire conversation. In order to make a change to go from your familiar hell to your unfamiliar heaven, you have to be willing to take a look at yourself and what your actions, your behaviors, your words, what you did to get yourself there. Because if you sit there and say, oh, my ex did this to me, or, work is not going well because of XYZ and all these external forces, that's not taking accountability. That's victim mindset. And that will keep you in people pleasing. That will keep you in that being resentful and feeling unfulfilled and putting blame on the world. And that will not lead to the life that you want of joy and happiness and love and connection. But humans don't want to make changes. Truthfully, deep, deep down, humans don't want to go from their familiar hell to their unfamiliar heaven, because it takes having to look at yourself, your own actions. And oh boy, does the guilt, does the shame, does the anger, does the resentment towards ourselves come up when we do that. So it's easier to run away from it, pretend it didn't happen, blame other people. And when you are able to look at your own life and say, I am accountable for being in this situation, that is where you can start to learn the lessons and make the change. But that is why change is so hard and so scary. So unfulfilling careers, people stick with jobs that they hate, that they dislike, with bosses that, you complain about, because you fear the uncertainty of a new career path. So you may choose the familiarity of an unfulfilling job, or not making enough money, or just really like going into work and driving 2 hours a day for it, over the risk of pursuing something different because that's scary and you don't have certainty on it. So that's a lot of information about the familiar hell. I'm sure that you're thinking to yourself, there's at least one area at one place. Maybe it's with yourself, maybe it's with someone else. But I want you to think about, what is the companion that you have? It's the companion in essence that you're like, go away. I don't want you anymore. I don't think you're healthy. That is your familiar hell. So the unfamiliar heaven, on the other hand, symbolizes the potential for positive change and personal growth. And it's exciting and it's rewarding, yet it's fucking terrifying, because it's a leap into the unknown where we face new challenges. And we don't know what the new challenges are going to be. There's going to be new opportunities, there's new experiences. And so while the idea of a better life, a better career, or a rewarding relationship can be incredibly appealing, it also triggers your nervous system's alarm bells. When you start thinking about change and this unfamiliar heaven, that is uncertainty, and your nervous system starts to go ding, 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 ding. No, 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 I don't want that. I don't want that. And change for the better in your life represents this uncertainty, and your brain perceives uncertainty as a potential threat. I'm going to say that again because it is super important. So change for the better represents uncertainty, and your brain perceives uncertainty as a potential threat. So it disrupts familiar patterns, and it forces your nervous system to adapt to new circumstances, which is scary and it is uncomfortable. And the this all happens within the brain because the brain's natural tendency, as I said, is to prioritize safety and survival. So when we step into the unfamiliar, your nervous system responds with a fight or flight response. And this can manifest, and when I say manifest, it shows up as anxiety, doubt, resistance. So this is why I mentioned your beliefs that are in your subconscious mind, because all of these are going to be coming up. Your doubts and your resistance, those are beliefs that you have. So this is why even when you know that change is necessary for your own health, for your own safety, for your own well-being, you hesitate because your brain is connected to your nervous system, and your nervous system is hardwired to this familiar path, something from childhood. And so you're sitting there saying, okay, I'm going to make a change now, right? I'm going to get off the scale. I'm going to stop doing that. And the brain literally goes, no, you're not. The fuck you are. Because that represents basically bringing the beliefs from your subconscious mind into fruition, into your mind. And then the mind is going to go, oh, right, I don't feel good about myself. I don't deserve this. I don't feel worthy. And so it becomes easier to once again numb the discomfort of uncomfortable emotions. And there's a lot of things that go hand in hand and tie with this. It's such a fascinating thing. And I've learned so much about it because of my own divorce. And going from my familiar hell, I made a huge change. And I'm in London. And the thing is, there are still moments of incredible uncertainty. I probably have more uncertainty than I do certainty. And that is part of changing the belief system. That is why I love my program, the Ultimate Transformation Program, so much, because we work on the beliefs to help you understand why these beliefs are not true and they're holding you back from the very thing that you want in life. It's also why I work, and I'm not a doctor. I don't ever claim to be one. I'm not a neuroscientist. I haven't gone to any of these types of schools, but I've studied psychology in depth. I've gone through my own experience with eating disorders. The amount of women that come into the Ultimate Transformation Program with disordered or actual serious eating disorders, and they heal these disorders, the disordered eating. I mean, I'm not making claims that I can heal you on that legally. I'm not. But I'm telling you that this program works because we are dealing with your nervous system, learning how to calm it down. We're dealing with your beliefs. We're changing them. You learn your values. You learn things that stress you out versus joy. And as I said in the beginning, if you're really high, stressed out, well, that is your familiar hell. That is you prioritizing things that bring you unhappiness over things that do bring you happiness. Why? Because it's certainty. So humans will choose to be stressed even if they don't like it. You choose to focus on your to-do list, not because you're like, oh man, I'm going to be so fulfilled at the end of this day. It's because you've trained your brain that is where you get control in your life. So understanding why your nervous system prefers the familiar hell over unfamiliar heaven it's the first step to overcoming the resistance to change in your life. And it is essential to acknowledge that this fear, it's a natural response and it is not a sign of weakness. So I want to leave you with a few tips, a few strategies to help you navigate the path of going from your familiar hell into your unfamiliar heaven. So number one, it's getting clear on what is the area that you're not seeing changes in your life, or you're not feeling good, or you just feel like there's a little bit of an unhealthy relationship. And as I mentioned, this unhealthy relationship can be with yourself. It can be with an ex. It can be with someone you feel like you're being manipulated by. It can be someone that you are manipulating. It can be your relationship with food, with alcohol, with money and spending. So it's the relationship that where you look at it and you're like, yeah, that might not be quite so healthy. And it can also be where you're putting intimacy blocks and pushing love away. So number one, it's getting clear on what area in your life you have this unhealthy relationship. Number two, it's asking yourself, what do I actually want? What does my unfamiliar heaven look like? If I could snap my fingers or Nikki Sharp could wave a magic wand, what would be different in my life? What would I accept in my life? Or what would I no longer tolerate? My client, for example, who steps on the scale, I know that she would say, I just would never even want to get on the scale. I would feel so good. And by the way, we've worked together and she has stopped getting on the scale and she feels so much better. And guess what? She has actually lost weight. And this scale was the thing that was holding her back. So for some of you, it's going to be an ex-partner that you're dealing with is the person holding you back. Or it could be yourself holding you back because you're so scared of what might come because that's out of your control. So it's getting clear on the area, the category, the person, the whatever it is that you have this unhealthy relationship with. Next, it's really defining like, what does my unfamiliar heaven look like? And I can tell you right now, guys, I am living my unfamiliar heaven right now. And it's been scary. It has absolutely been scary, but it has been the best fucking thing I have ever done in my life. Hands down. If I had to do everything all over again and get married and get divorced and move to London, I would do it in a heartbeat. Because where I'm at now, I have so much peace. I have so much just calmness. I feel so much better about myself, about my life. I do things that bring me joy instead of focusing on things that stress me out. And because of this, I've slowed down. I've really gotten into my feminine. I'm learning more things about myself, and it's a beautiful place to be. This is what self-development is, personal growth. So number 3 is writing down, what does my familiar hell actually look like right now? So just put it on paper. What does my familiar hell look like? So number 2, what does my unfamiliar heaven look like? Number 3, what does my familiar hell look like? Number 4 is go slow and steady. Now I'm going to give that as a caveat. The caveat, or there is a caveat. The caveat is that sometimes you need to burn all your bridges. So while I'm saying go slow and steady, gradual change can be less intimidating for your nervous system. That is important. All we're doing here is talking about the nervous system. It is super, super, super vital that you are in touch with your nervous system, keeping it calm, keeping it regulated. How do you do this? You do this through meditation, through journaling, through getting in nature, through exercise. If you're not exercising right now and you're trying to make a change from your familiar hell to your unfamiliar heaven, you got to move the body because energy gets stuck in the body. And your brain also doesn't process things as well if you are stagnant. Another thing with this is you have to be eating clean. And I'm not talking vegan, vegetarian, paleo. Like, I'm just saying, foods that are colorful, drinking water, getting enough sleep, those are going to be super important to making change. So the caveat to this is that you will at some point have to burn your bridges. Me getting a divorce and moving was burning the bridges. If you are trying to make a change into something new, there has to be a place where you're willing to let go. So for my client, it was getting rid of the scale. And I kept telling her, you got to get rid of it. You need to get it out of your house because when it was there, it was too easy to step on it. This might look like setting boundaries, essentially. Burning your bridges is making a change and setting boundaries and not letting them be breakable. And boundaries are a thing that only you can control. So if someone tries to push your boundaries, that is up to you if you're allowing that or not. So I think we're on number, we did 1, 2, 3, 4. No, we're on number 5 is you got to have self-compassion. Compassion is the thing that will get you to where you want to go. Being mean and beating yourself up, that is a toxic relationship, my friends. So if you wanted to raise a healthy child, a healthy, happy, wonderful, smart child, if you sat there telling your child all the things that you say to yourself, do you think they would turn out very good? Probably not. So being compassionate, acknowledging your fears and your doubts without judgment, this is so vital. It's so key. I truly cannot emphasize this enough. Number 6 is that You got to have some sort of support in a support network, whether it's friends, family, a therapist, someone like me, a coach. When you're trying to make big changes and go from your familiar hell to your unfamiliar heaven, you need guidance. You really do, because there are going to be emotional challenges that come with change. And I want you to know that there are people who want to support you, but you have to be willing to let help in. And I was speaking with a friend who said, I don't accept help. I don't need help. I'm not looking for help. I'm like, wow, that's a sad life. Really? Because we all need help. There's no child on this planet that can survive life without help. But we as adults, that is your familiar heaven, by the way. If you say, I don't need help, that is a familiar heaven that is keeping you in an unhealthy pattern where you don't necessarily love your life and you're not seeing the very things that you want, the fulfillment, the happiness, the love, the joy. So it's just getting clear, but then allowing yourself to share and open up and seek support, ask for help. Like, this should be a non-negotiable, you guys. It really should. This is also why I love UTP, because it is such a supportive program. So the last one is visualization. And visualization is, no, I'm not talking about some woo-woo, do any of this. You have to be clear on what you want. Where are you going? So during my divorce, which was truly one of the hardest times of my entire life, I had a path forward because I had a vision that was of a compelling future. I knew what I was stepping into. And everything that I teach in UTP, it's what I use on myself. So I had a compelling future in front of me, and that has gotten me through. Day after day, when I go through challenging moments, or it's uncertain, or I'm scared, or I don't know what's to come, I just remind myself all the amazing things I've done so far. And also, I have a vision board. I have things on the cover of my phone. I keep creating and quote unquote manifesting things in my life that I want, because that is the life I'm stepping into. So I literally stepped out of one life and it felt like I went through this time vortex portal. That's what happens when you burn your bridges and you make this scary choice, is you go to the other side and you're like, whoa, this is really scary, but really fucking cool. And I promise it will be, because your nervous system will start to calm down. So with that, I hope that this resonated in some way. This was a lot longer than I intended it for it to be. I thought this was going to be like a 20, 30-minute episode, but I'm very passionate about this, about the familiar hell versus unfamiliar heaven, because I think we are not talking about it enough. I think people are getting so caught up on just demonizing certain things, or, buzzwords that happen on Instagram. And everything in life is interconnected. Your nervous system is connected to your brain, which is looking for survival all the time. It's protecting you. Your brain, you have your beliefs that are in your subconscious mind. These are affecting everything you do in life. So everything is connected, and trying to just change one thing, it won't work. Because if you're trying to say, I want love in my life, I want to be loved, I want to support other people, I want to receive love, well, we have to look at the fears holding you back. We have to look at what your familiar hell is at the moment. So anyways, I really do hope that this resonated in some way, shape, or form. I hope that you learned something from it. I'd be very curious to hear your thoughts, your feedback. I would love to know what your unfamiliar heaven and familiar hell are. So please reach out, send me a message on Instagram. I love chatting with you and connecting with you. And until next week, here's to a sharper life.